Okay guys, I'm going to show you a quick video here. I was in the middle of doing some work on this 99 Suburban, and it led to needing to replace the idler arm. So I'm going to show you that whole process here while I'm in the middle of this other repair. So the first thing you got to do, there's an air dam here that's held on by 4 15mm bolts, 2 on the frame cross member here, and then 2 up on the frame rail that have a wavy washer, because normally you just pull this thing down in order to grease this idler arm bracket. It's a service access panel in most respects. So I've already removed that here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go on the arm, attaches to the center link with a 21mm nut. We're going to come over here with the impact wrench and remove that, and then we're going to separate the arm from the center link with a pickle fork. So let's go on the other side and do that now. All right, here's this 21mm bolt I was telling you guys about. I'm going to come up here and remove this with the electric impact wrench. You don't normally have any trouble getting this one off. This is the easy part. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in through the wheel well, stick a pickle fork in between here to separate the arm from the center link. I've already removed the tie rods too, because I'm changing those out. Those are easy, so I'm not going to show that part. So let's go to this next part and we'll show how to separate this guy and get him pushed out. On this side, we're in the passenger side wheel well. I'm going to be using this pickle fork. I got a small extension attached to it that screws on. This is the same size I used to get the tie rods out. It's about 2 fingers width. I didn't actually measure the size here. I'm going to position this guy in between the idler arm and the center link. So the process on this, it's one of escalating persuasion. I usually start off with this brass hammer. This guy's a 3-pounder. Try with that. I'll be laying underneath, so I won't be able to actually show you this while holding the camera. If I don't get very far with that, I'll switch to a 4-pound hammer. And if you're really having trouble, and you might if it's been on for a long time, then you can either have a longer handle that you can screw on. I got that. You can also use a piece of metal pipe, give yourself an extension. If you get this far and it's not budging, and you're up to this with the 4-pound hammer, you're going to have to jack it up and pull the passenger side wheel off so you can get a real good arc for the swing. The thing with this is if it's not coming off, you're doing one of 2 things wrong. You either are not hitting it hard enough or you do not have a big enough hammer. If you got both of those, it's coming off. All right, so like I said, I can't actually show you getting this off while filming, but I'm going to get that off and I'll show you after we get it popped. After you get the pickle fork in there and you separate the idler arm stud from the center link, then since we've already taken the bolts off the bracket, we can take the whole assembly out. Just have to wiggle it around here. It's not too hard. Watch these wire harnesses. All right, so now we got this out, and there went the flashlight. Let me get the new parts. We'll set them side by side, and we'll go over it. All right, we've got our old idler arm bracket and idler arm out. Actually went ahead and took the time to remove the arm. You can get this off with a Pitman arm puller, actually. You got to make sure you wear eye protection, because actually a little piece of this guy chipped off. You know, what I do is I try to keep the nut in part way, but I didn't have it all the way in. So it chipped off inside the nut, fortunately, and kept this from flying around. But I'm not keeping these, so I'm okay with that. But as you get this off, what I do is I take a brass hammer, just like a Pitman arm, and you get the impact wrench on the Pitman arm puller. You get it tight. You give this guy a few whacks. You tighten it up. You give him a few whacks. Usually it'll come off right within the first or second round of whacks, depending on how long it's been since you changed this. If it's not coming off, you either don't have a big enough hammer or you're not hitting it hard enough. Here's the new stuff. So the new bracket, GM calls it a housing, is part number 26059031. This is a new replacement GM idler arm bracket. And in the package, there'll be 2 nuts. One nut is to initially tighten the arm down and get it into position on the tapered end and get it to sit. And then there's a prevailing torque nut that you'll actually use and torque down for the one that actually stays on to service the vehicle. The first one is just temporary and discardable. And we look at the arm itself, part number 26059030. So you see they're only 1 digit apart, 30 and 31. It's kind of a similar arrangement in terms of the nuts. You see there's a shipping nut on the end of the stud here with a little cardboard sleeve that you can discard. This shipping nut is what you'll actually use to initially torque it up into the center link and get it to sit in the tapered end. And then similarly in the back here, there's a prevailing torque nut that'll go on here that you ultimately torque down, and this gets discarded. And then again, there's an initial nut here that duplicates actually what's provided with the bracket, because sometimes people are just replacing the arm, so GM gives you all this stuff, so you'll end up with some extra nuts here. But you know, this guy will go on just like you see with this one, and then you'll put that nut on there, initially tighten it down, and then put the prevailing nut down. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get it mounted and torqued out of the vehicle, and then mount it back in, get the bolts through the bracket frame here, through the frame of the vehicle. I'm not going to torque them down until I get it into the center link. These bolts, the best way to show, it's not really easy to get the camera down here. You start them through and then push the bracket on. Just get maybe 1 or 2 threads going, and then keep moving this around till you get them all. Hardest part of this job is not dropping the bolts in the frame rail. So, you know, have a magnet on the end of a probe handy in case you do. So let me get this torque down. I'll go over the torque values. We'll get it mounted in the vehicle, and we'll wrap this up. Hey guys, we're just about ready to get this installed, and this I want to show you a little bit about setting the taper end here and getting it set, because if you don't do it right, this whole shaft is going to spin on you. There's 2 ways to do it. If you notice at the end of the bracket, there's an Allen key indentation. So, you know, the factory way would be to use an Allen wrench as you torque this down initially to 15 foot-pounds with this throwaway nut, and then after you get that done, you put the prevailing torque nut on and torque it to 40 foot-pounds. But if you don't have the Allen wrench, I'm showing you as an alternative way. You can get a large C-clamp, a 5-inch one in this case, hooking it down between the eyelet here and the top, and you tighten this guy down until you're able to tighten this up without the shaft moving. That way you can torque it down. Hope that helps you out. I'm going to go ahead and get the other nut on here and get it mounted back in. Almost there. I think I mentioned before that you need to take like a plastic lined plier or some other tool where you won't damage this, and bend this shield up enough so that you could get your 18mm socket and extension into this access hole for this bracket. So I'm getting ready to put those bolts back through. You can see down here we've got the bracket ready to mount. We've got the prevailing torque nut now at 40 foot-pounds, and the set nut discarded that was used for the 15 foot-pound setting up the taper and getting it in position that we showed before. Once we get this in on the center link, we'll use this discardable bolt, which again, as I mentioned earlier, is so that we can set the taper into the center link. Then we'll toss this, and we'll use the prevailing torque nut to eventually torque it down to factory spec. I have a magnetic tool here. You never know, you might drop one of these guys in the frame rail. What I like to do is put one through and hold it there with a helper, and then you can position one of the eyes on, start a hand turn, a washer and a nut, and then just keep going around till you get all 3 in position before you start trying to torque anything down. So I'm going to do that next, and I'll show you where we're at. Mounted. These 3 nuts get torqued to 73 foot-pounds, kind of an odd value. I want to point out something. I said something incorrect before. This prevailing torque nut, before you mount it, it's 74 foot-pounds, this one at the bottom. So after you set it with the service nut at 15, and then you put it on to around 40 to make sure it's still holding and not spinning, then go ahead and torque it down to 74. What we're going to do now is we've bent the metal on the other side of this guy back down the way it's supposed to be on the other side of the frame rail, on that shield. We're going to come down now and torque down the nut to the center link. So I've got the service nut tightened up here, and I've got the taper set so that I can remove it and put the prevailing torque nut on. If you have trouble with this spinning, because it's not catching, you can put a C-clamp under here. Sometimes you can get a piece of wood wedged up under there so to get it to catch, so that you can torque it down and get the taper to set inside the center link. All right, so let me get this off and put the prevailing torque nut on. This is going to be put on at a 46 foot-pounds of torque. So hopefully you can see that. I'm going to set this camera here. Get my wrench in here. Take the service nut off. And you can throw these away or put them in your toolbox. You want to use them for something else. And then we put the prevailing torque nut on. This is like a not perfectly centered nut. You can only turn it so far by hand. It's kind of like an off circle shape, like an egg shape. Avoids the need to have a lock washer here. And we're going to put this guy on at 46 foot-pounds. Check periodically, these going in without spinning. There we go. All right, we're done. That's it for changing out your idler arm bracket and arm, or just the arm on the old bracket, whatever you might be doing. In this case, it was the original bracket, so I decided just to change everything out. At the same time, I was replacing these tie rods. Going to torque these guys down as well to 46 foot-pounds in just a moment. Hope this helps you out. Thanks for watching.